This is the first electric embalming machine that was introduced to the profession in 1940. It certainly looks like a pressure cooker. You poured the embalming fluid in this hole here, and then you could determine how much pressure you had, and then this is the injection needle. I made this bust of a man when I was in mortuary school in the early 50s. Today, when a person passes away, we go to the hospital, the nursing home, or the residence in an ambulance cot to transfer the person to the funeral home. However, up through the 20s, they always went in a wicker basket, such as this, and transferred the person to the funeral home. One of our more illustrious people of Indiana, John Dillinger, I watched the story of his life history, and he was from Mooresville, Indiana, and he was shot by the cops in Chicago area. And when they took him from the police morgue to a funeral home to have his body prepared to ship back to Mooresville, it showed him being taken from the police morgue to the funeral home in a wicker basket. These are different colored veils. You remember that you saw a veil in the home setting of the casket. These are just different colored veils that were used. These are blankets that you could buy. These are two adult blankets. This is a baby blanket that you could buy from the undertaker to wrap your relative in. These are burial dresses that you could purchase from the funeral home. These first four are all velvet type dresses, and these are crepe dresses. You will notice that they're $12 each. They would certainly cost you a lot more today. This is a typical undertaker out of the late 1800s and the early 1900s. He wore a frock tail coat, he wore striped pants, a gray vest, and the traditional top hat. You will notice that you remember that the very first parlor that we came into, when there was absolutely no embalming, and then the very second room that you went to was when embalming was done in the bedroom where you passed away. Well, this was in between these two areas. This is just a viewing casket. The person was taken out of this casket and put into a coffin before the burial place took place. If you had a death in your family during the night, you summoned the undertaker, and he would bring out this coffin or casket and the 75-pound of ice. Now this casket is lined with galvanized. You know, the old galvanized horse trough. It didn't rust nearly as quickly as tin would. It's lined in the bottom and on the sides with galvanized. And then he would chop up the ice, put 6 to 8 inches of ice in there, and then put a rubber sheet on top of the ice. And after the person was bathed and dressed, then he would place it on top of the ice. Then he would pull the sheet up on the sides of the person and stuff ice down in there. That meant that instead of having the funeral if you died today, tomorrow, that you could wait for another day, maybe for 2 days, and have the funeral of a morning. And this was a big deal for these people. You know, you had, if you died today, you had to have the funeral tomorrow. And by placing this ice on this person, they could delay it 1 day. You will notice that the head end of the viewing casket, is higher than the foot end. And you will also notice that there was a spigot in there. The person never floated in water. As the ice would melt, the water would run out into a bucket. Usually it was the grandchildren that were given that duty. When the bucket was full, they would take it out and empty it and put it back under there. But anyway, that was how this worked. Now this is a child's casket. It's 2.5 foot long. This was before a stillborn or up to usually 6 months. Then this one is 3.5 foot long. It would be for a child that would fit in it. Now you will notice that we told you in the other room that we always put a panel over the glass for viewing. Now this coffin itself is 5 foot in length. It would be for a teenager. And you can see when it was made. It's almost as old as I am. It was built in 1869, I think. Now, in the instance where we took the bodies back to the house for the viewing, there were a lot of home funerals. And if they did not have an organ in the home or a pianist, then the undertaker could take this folding organ out to the house and get him a piano player, and they could have music for the funeral. Now this organ folds up, and it's no bigger than a regular size suitcase, and it has a handle on the top. And I'm going to show you, now this is over 90 years old. I'm not a piano player, but I am going to show you that the organ still works. And keep in mind that this organ is over 90 years old. This display here is more or less for the younger people. Anytime a businessman or his wife passed away, they closed the business from the time of death until the day after the funeral. The undertaker would take out an artificial bouquet of flowers and sit at the front door of the business, whatever it was, and they would have a close sign telling who had passed away, when the funeral was, and when the business would reopen. Now, today, usually business just closes for an hour and a half while the funeral is going on. But in the old days, in my early days in the business, they were closed from the time of the person's death until after, the day after the funeral. When the Gills bought the funeral home, or built the funeral home that they're operating in today, they moved in September of 1941, before war broke out in December. And when they built this new funeral home and moved in, then they bought this Catholic equipment. Of course, naturally, it's been replaced several times, but they did keep this in the basement, and we thought it should be displayed up here. This is a kneeling bench. This is the torch heirs, and this is the mass card holder.